Okay, so next up we welcome someone who's devoted his career to elevating the profession of sales. Please join us in welcoming Willis Turner. He's the President and CEO of SMEI. His talk will be Professional Selling, a Calling of a High Order. So Willis is the President and CEO of SMEI, the Worldwide Professional Association of Sales and Marketing, and an in-kind sponsor here for this year's event. So we're really happy to have them out today. Willis will speak a bit more about SMEI as well, hopefully, during your talk. Okay, excellent. As a passionate marketing professional and sales success advocate, Willis is a certified association executive from the American Society of Association Executives. He strives to give back to the community. He has served as a voluntary capacity on the National Advisory Board of DECA and the Kaplan University Marketing Advisory Board. Additionally, he has served on the National Society of Professional Engineers Board as well. So, Willis, we thank you for being here, and welcome, Willis. So now that's going to go. I think you have to exit out, or?
No, you just have to hit that.
You're good? Thank you.
I'll take one of these. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to be with you, and I want to just say how much I appreciate Patrick and Rose for putting this session on. My first time to attend, and I'm so impressed. It's a great event. It's running like clockwork. And Rose mentioned yesterday that if we go overtime, there's a big hook that's going to come out. And I noticed that nobody has gone overtime. And then I was looking around the room and I saw the big hook. And I thought, wow, that's why. There's meaning in those words, let me tell you. It's kind of like being in the classroom. If you don't follow through, your classroom is just going to go amok, right? If you don't follow through on your words. So thank you again. It's such a pleasure to be here. I come from, some people call it Raincouver, but I came here from the Sunshine Coast to rainy Cambridge. But it's awesome to be here. I'm going to challenge you this morning. I'm going to challenge you. I want to challenge your thinking. I want you to open your mind. And I want you to think about how you're going to open the minds of your students. And I'm going to first of all challenge the name of this conference, ReINVENT Sales. Respectfully, I don't think we need to reinvent sales. I think we need to go back to the fundamentals. I love what we heard from Antonio in the panel earlier this morning, and it's been touched on as a theme throughout this conference, is the human skills, the relationship skills that we all need to succeed, not just in sales, but in life. The ability to adapt. I grew up as a farm boy, a poor farm in rural Alberta. And on that farm, we didn't have a lot. There were 7 children. There was 1 tractor. And we didn't have, each of us have a tractor to run. But when that tractor broke down, it was devastating. If we got stuck in the mud when we were running the tractor, we had to learn how to adapt. If we're out in the back 40 and got stuck in the mud, what could we do? Come running to the house and say, Dad, I got stuck in the mud? No. Get the logging chains out, cut down a few saplings, strap them to those back tires, dangerously so, and get yourself out of that hole. That's how we did it. We learned to adapt. I think that's what really prepared me for sales, is being able to respond and adapt. So my talk today is Open the Mind and Close the Sale. It's based on a book of the same title. This book was first published and authored by John M. Wilson in 1954. And it has some amazing fundamentals in it. I was first made aware of this book by a phone call from the CEO of a large multinational company based in the US. And he said, Willis, I need your help. I'm looking for a book called Open the Mind and Close the Sale. And I said, why are you calling me? And he said, because the gentleman who wrote it was a member of your organization in New York, a member of SMEI. And I thought that you might be aware of this book or how we can get a copy of it. Unfortunately, it was long out of print. But what he told me was pretty amazing and made me very interested in this book. He said that as a young salesperson entering his career, his manager made it required reading. And it changed the trajectory of his life, not just his career, but his life. And he says, I attribute my role in the C-suite today from the fundamentals in this book. So I got searching for the book, and I found a used copy on eBay for $147. Maybe kind of like the price of a textbook, only this is one that you want to read, right? All kidding aside, I think textbooks are important. One of the things that I noticed in this book was that it's like doctrine. It's fundamental human relationship skills, and although it doesn't talk about technology because they didn't have sales enablement in those days, but they relied on human skills, handwritten reports. And so what I did is, over the period of many months, a labor of love, I took this book, I didn't take it apart, but I updated it for modern readers. One thing that I noticed about it was that the only role that women had in this book was in a supportive role. And I felt that needed to be corrected. Many women played a role in sales even though they weren't acknowledged. And in the rise of the department store era, women were called sales clerks. They weren't called salespeople. And so the book used the term salesman throughout. That has been changed to salesperson or sales professional. And in the book, we do recognize the role of women in sales. I think that's really, really critical. I'm not going to patronize women today, but women do an incredibly good job in selling and have earned the right to a place at the table. So, last year, I was able, fortunately, to publish the second edition of Open the Mind and Close the Sale. And at the risk of turning this into a book club, I'm going to read you a passage from the book, just a short one. Because John Wilson was the vice president of sales for the National Cash Register Company, NCR, which was founded by John Patterson. So this passage is called Selling is Serving. John H. Patterson, founder of the National Cash Register Company and the father of modern professional selling, did not believe that salespeople were born. So we look for people who have that natural aptitude, don't we? But they're not born that way. As my old friend, the late Zig Ziglar, said, you never read a birth announcement that says, Zig Ziglar, born a salesman. No, you're not born that way. As long as selling was a haphazard trial and error vocation, there was some truth to this statement, but he set out to prove that selling was a science to be studied just as law, medicine, or engineering are studied. He established the first sales school, and with it brought dignity and distinction to selling. Thus, today's salesperson is a painstaking, well-trained individual who considers his or herself in a profession just as much as a doctor, lawyer, or engineer. Is that how you're setting up your classroom? His or her goal is to create and satisfy their customers once they reach this goal by a carefully planned series of professional procedures involving extensive planning, promotion, and presentation. Modern salesmanship is based on the principle of customer satisfaction. It considers the salesperson not only as an instruction of the sale, but also a part of the purchase. For along with the product or service, a customer buys the services of the salesperson and the company which they represent. Selling is a profession established on service. When the concept of the salesperson is to give the maximum of satisfaction through service to their customers, and all that this implies, theirs is a professional usefulness in life. So that is a calling, ladies and gentlemen. When every sale must be mutually profitable, sound and lasting relationships between the customer and the salesperson represent their company are established. The salesperson serves their customer and their company fully by bringing them together in a continuing favorable relationship. When I talk to salespeople, sometimes the boss doesn't like to hear this. But I say, you can have a customer for life. A customer for life. If you do the right thing, build the relationship, a customer for life. You will not have a job for life. But you, if you treat the customer right, they will trust you for life. Every relationship is like that. You know, I'm going to talk briefly about AI because I believe AI is a reality. I saw a sign on the 401 coming here from the airport that says, barely high is too high. I think barely AI is not even AI. We have to recognize AI, and we have to coach and learn AI. But I'll get to that in a minute. Selling is a profession, not a personality. This is a foundational truth that we need to bring into every sales classroom. Sales is a learned skill, not a inborn talent. For decades, the popular myth has been that great salespeople are natural-born closers, people with magnetic personalities who can talk anyone into anything. But that myth has done a lot of damage. It's discouraged people, especially students who are more analytical, more introverted, or more methodical, from ever considering sales as a viable career. If you've read Daniel Pink, To Sell is Human, you will understand that there is a scale of people from introvert to extrovert. And guess who the best salespeople are? Ambiverts. You're right, Matt. Ambiverts. They're in the middle. They're able to adapt. They can adapt to being an introvert or an extrovert. And that is the key. Ambiverts know how to listen. You know, I learned something in my travels. By the way, I'm going to ask you a question now. I should have asked this at the beginning. I've got about 37 slides. So I'm going to give you an option. Do you want me to go through all 37, or would you like me to tell stories? Stories? Does anybody want me to go through all the slides? Yeah, the hook's there. You'll get the slides later. You absolutely can. And they're full of the notes. My talking points are all in the notes, so yeah. So when I travel in China, I learned something really valuable. I've been going to China since 1999. And when I first went, it was very restricted. Foreigners could only stay in the Friendship Hotel. Now there's probably more Marriotts in China than there are in the US. But I learned something valuable. In that culture, when you go to do business, you have a formal meeting. When you make a sales presentation, you do it as a team. Your team comes and sits on one side of the boardroom table, and the buyer's team sits on the other side. In this case, my first trip was the State Department of Education. A daunting organization. we gave our introductions were made, and I was told, I hired a coach to help me, a culture coach. He was the vice president of marketing for Procter & Gamble, and his bailiwick was the Swiffer brand, a multi-million-dollar brand in itself within Procter & Gamble. But he was born in Nanjing, and so he offered to be my culture coach, and so he went with me, and he said, what you do is they will first present, and then you present. One thing about presenting when you're working with an interpreter is you have to watch the body language, not the body language of the interpreter, but of the presenter. So you listen to the interpreter, but you don't look at them. And the same when you're speaking. So body language is really critical, and you can pick up a lot of things that way. But these kind of meetings go on seemingly endlessly, but in the evening, then you gather around the big round Chinese table with the Lazy Susan in the middle, and you're the guest of honor, and you sit next to the host. Now what do? Do you get to tell your story now? No, you get to listen. And the host guides the conversation. And you only interject when the host asks you a question or offers to let you speak. I had one gentleman with me who was on the board of our organization, and he didn't quite get that, and he wanted to talk. Because in the Western culture, we're not comfortable with silence. We need to get comfortable with silence. Because in negotiation and in selling, silence is golden. We can learn to listen. Learn to listen and just wait. That speaks volumes. You know, in March of 2020, I came back from Gerhard Schwantner's Sales 3.0 conference in Orlando, where I had the privilege of presenting and listening to some great presenters. And I flew back to Vancouver on March 13th, 2020. What was going on then? The pandemic. I arrived back in the Vancouver airport, and I was handed an arrival card that I'd never seen in my life before, and it says, you are required by the government to go into 2 weeks of quarantine, isolation. My wife wouldn't even come and pick me up at the airport. She didn't want to be in the car with me. Everyone was afraid. So I took an Uber, an hour and a half. And when I got home, I had a text message on my phone that says the basement door is open. So I lived in the basement for 2 weeks. Thankfully, it was a self-contained basement. I had everything I needed. I ordered a toaster oven from Amazon. I ordered meals from Save On Foods. And I was able to survive in that basement. But I got thinking, how can I be a better human? How can I contribute to this world that we live in? How can I listen to what the needs are? And how can I respond? And I dug way back. I hate to say this, but it's about 45 years, maybe more now. I used to be a funeral director. And in that business, you're selling. That is part of the job. But you're mostly listening. And that job taught me about empathy. And so I thought, you know what? People cannot hold funerals right now. What can I do? And I'm pretty good on Zoom. So I thought, why don't we start a business to do virtual funerals so people can get together as a community like they normally would, but just in a virtual environment. And so we started a company called Virtual Memorial Gatherings. We launched a website. That was late March. We launched the business on April 4th. And we put live chat on our website, and we had notifications turned on so that when a new visitor or a returning visitor came to the site, we got an audible notification. It came on my phone, and it was going off so many times I had to turn it off. People were using our Calendly system to book funerals without ever talking to us. Booking them and paying for them in advance, just like they would a hotel or an airline. It was, to them, it was almost like a commodity. But what we learned was that it wasn't a transaction. They were needy people. They were fragile people. They needed help. And we found them at the intersection of need and opportunity. All of our sales, and today the company is still operating very viably. We've branched out into live streaming now as well, but we still do a lot of virtual services all over Canada and the US. We just had a live stream in Scarborough yesterday and one in Woodland Hills, California this morning. There's another one taking place, a virtual service later today. I have a passion for that. And it comes through in how we work with our staff and how we respond to people. So here's a typical sales call. All of our leads are inbound. We optimize for SEO and digital marketing. All of our leads are inbound. So our sales calls are all responding because we feel it's not ethical to call people, read an obituary and call them for offering our service. It just doesn't seem right. So a typical call we would say something like, tell me what you're looking for. Have you ever attended a virtual service before? Have you ever had live streaming services? What is the name of your loved one that you want to honor? And then, I'm sorry for your loss. Would we say, I'm sorry for your loss? Have you picked a date? No. I'm sorry for your loss. Quiet. Listen. They're grieving. And it takes them some time to respond and process what you've just said. It may be a new concept to them to have somebody actually feeling how they feel, their pain. Think about this in terms of your students. How are you going to prepare your students to have that kind of empathy? Because empathy is a number one skill. We heard about emotional intelligence. Empathy is one of the biggest factors in emotional intelligence. Having empathy, being able to read the room and not have it a transaction. To sell is human, I love that. Professionalism trumps charm. Charm would never work in that industry. You can't be a charmer to someone who's grieving. You can't be a charmer to someone who has a complex problem to solve. It's not going to work. You need to have the skills to be able to penetrate and find out what their need is. Where's their pain? Identify it and help them as a solution provider to solve that pain. Think about how sales has changed. In the high-stakes B2B environments, like software, financial services, or medical equipment, buyers aren't impressed by small talk. They don't want to hear it. They want to know, can this person solve my problem? Can they be trusted? Do they understand my business? If someone was to do an analysis of your social reviews, if you get social reviews, or rate my professor, what would be the biggest word in the word cloud? Just maybe a useful exercise for you to think about. In our new business, we get reviews, unsolicited reviews. Every single review so far has been 5-star. Do you know what the number one word is? Empathy. Empathy. And many times the reviews name the person by name that has been working with them. That's a personal relationship. It's very short term because you deal with them in the time of need. It's perishable inventory. It comes and it goes. But they will never forget that. You can have a customer for life if you treat them right. Let's talk about consistency. Consistency is really hard. My first job in sales management was for the dearly departed Hudson's Bay Company. I'm really sad about that. I'm really quite sad. I love that company. I love working for it. It was a good culture. It taught me a lot. But you know why I was hired for that job? It wasn't because I had a sales background. It was because on my resume, I had attended Hamburger U. I worked for McDonald's, and I had attended Hamburger U. How many young people today are influenced by their training at McDonald's and go on to do great things in life? Maybe they weren't an A student. And sometimes the A students end up working for the C students. Why? We heard about it this morning. Grit. Discipline. The willingness to get back up and go again when they make a mistake, when they fail. That's what sales is about. The resiliency. Being able to take that textbook being thrown at your leg and get back up again and say, I'm not quitting. I'm not a quitter. I taught my children this when they were growing up. Turners don't say can't. We don't say that word. We figure out a way, and we do it. You know, there's the great prophet Solomon said there's nothing new under the sun. That's true today. Nothing new. These fundamentals in this book, they're not new, they're basic human skills. AI is new, but it's just a tool. It's not something that we need to be afraid of. It's just a tool. It's a new tool in our toolbox. We have the opportunity of developing human skills that are going to make us successful in life and influence other people for good and use AI to be better humans. We don't have anything new in us other than our human ability to interrelate with other people. And if that's the fundamental skill that you're teaching in your classroom, you're going to prepare students for a career in sales. We need to change the narrative. We need to bring the method to meet the people. Look at other disciplines within your school. Look at engineering. Look at accounting. Look at finance. They're teaching people systems. We need to know systems. We need to know discipline. We need to know critical thinking skills. That's what higher education is about. We need to bring methods to meet people. You know, I'm going to ask you a question. Why do you think students don't show up to class? Anybody? Yes. They're working. Anything else? Not interesting. They don't see the value. I think you hit it. There's something else that's more valuable to them. If that's the case, maybe your classroom has a cultural challenge. Your culture is one of transaction. If it's just a transaction where you're sharing knowledge for their time, it may not be meaningful to them. There may not be value in it. But if it's experiential, if they really feel like this is critical, I need to get this to be successful in life, not just in sales, but I need to get this. This is core. I have a stepbrother in California who is a high school teacher, and his classroom is absolutely amazing. I'm not saying you need to do this, but if he gets moved at the end of a term or the end of a year to a different room in the building, it takes him 2 to 3 days to deconstruct his classroom because it's such a sensory experience to walk into it. What is the environment in your classroom like? Are you passionate about creating salespeople who are career ready? Let's talk about sales as a respected career. Salespeople can get certified. SMEI offers a sales certification. What does that actually mean? What does it mean? It means that they've met a standard. They've met a standard that is recognized by their peers, by employers. SMEI's sales certification is a global certification. It's recognized around the world. So when it can be used as a recruiting tool too. We had a large organization in the US called Toro. You might think of Toro as a lawnmower company. That's a very small part of their business. Their major business is golf course maintenance and irrigation. Multi-billion-dollar company. They put all their sales reps and all their distributor reps through SMEI's certification program. It wasn't a blanket certification. You don't get certified because everybody in the company is taking a program. You get it on individual merits. And there were some people who didn't make it. And the way Toro handled it with their distributor reps is because they didn't have control over them. They had an invitational incentive trip every 2 years. And in order to be invited, you had to be certified. So some people just thought, oh, it's not that big of a deal. And they didn't last with the company. It was kind of self-cleansing. They weeded out the people who weren't serious about sales as a profession. So one of their sales reps who didn't make it applied for a job at the competition. Their competition is John Deere. And he was being recruited, or he was being interviewed by the HR manager at John Deere. And the HR manager at John Deere knew the program that Toro had gone through. And so when he saw on his resume that he used to work for Toro, he said, you used to work for Toro, why aren't you certified? And he just ran the certification program into the ground. He bad-mouthed it. It was not important, it wasn't meaningful, it wasn't important to being in sales. And the recruiting manager at John Deere just said, if you couldn't meet that bar at Toro, that's probably why you're not there. It weeded him out. It automatically weeded him out. So one of the things that we can do in order to establish sales as to be known as an order of high calling is to meet these standards, to help students achieve them, and to appreciate that there are standards. There is a body of knowledge. You, in your classrooms, are conveying that body of knowledge. You're sharing it with students. so that they can become equipped to do a great job in sales. So here's something that you could do in your classroom. Have a debate. Divide the class into teams and debate, are salespeople made or born? Let each side present, then introduce research and professional standards that support sales as a taught profession. So this is a little exercise that you could do in your class, just to drive home that point. You could also have a case study, a sales career case study. Students research a sales professional who doesn't fit the traditional mold and present their path to success. You know, I'm finding that a lot of really, really good salespeople come through very divergent paths. There are a lot of engineers in sales. Why? Why do you think that is? Anybody want to hazard a guess? They know how to solve problems. They know how to identify problems. Sometimes customers don't know they have a problem. That's our job as salespeople, to help them identify it. Do you know that the biggest competition that we have in sales is status quo? Status quo. Just doing the same old every day and getting the same results. And many of our customers are doing that. They don't know there's something better. They're not aware. So our job in sales is to bring awareness. Product mastery. Product mastery builds confidence. This is something that you're not going to teach product mastery in the classroom because you don't know the product they're going to end up selling. But you will teach the importance of product mastery. If you know your product inside and out, you will have much more confidence in selling and helping customers solve their problems. It will really, truly build confidence. Confidence is what separates a hesitant salesperson from a high-performing one. Where does that confidence actually come from? It doesn't come from bravado. It comes from really knowing the product. When students really understand their product, what they're selling, how it works, how it's used, and how it compares, they stop second-guessing themselves. That certainty translates into stronger delivery, better questions, and a really much stronger presence in front of the buyer. How many times have you felt like you could take advantage of a salesperson? Yes. Did you feel stronger than them? Yeah, the car story. But it would have benefited you more if you would have had a stronger salesperson, wouldn't it? 100%. You would have had a better outcome. And so weakness in selling, weakness in lack of confidence is a deal breaker. It's a deal breaker. And learning to read the room and respect the buyer is also really part of confidence. If you lack confidence, you're not going to read the room properly. I'll give you a car story. We drove a Ford for many years. We had a van. We went through the van cycle with our 3 kids. See some nods of heads here. And we decided it was time to go to the SUV. So we were looking at the Ford Explorer, and we went into the Ford dealership, and we'd been dealing with them for years. And my wife was going to be the primary driver of this vehicle, and so she was asking some questions about safety. She wanted to know, does it have side airbags? Instead of telling her that it didn't have side airbags, they tried to downplay her desire for a safe vehicle. saying that that wasn't important. But guess how they answered her? They talked to me. They totally ignored her. And so it wasn't going well, and so the sales rep said, I'm going to get the sales manager. And the sales manager came in the room, and it got even worse because he did the same thing. So I looked at the situation, and I said to Bonnie, let's go. Let's go outside and talk. So we went outside, and we walked across the street to the Chev dealer and bought a Tahoe the same day. Because when we talked to them, they acknowledged Bonnie. And they said, we understand how important side airbags are. And to bring that story full circle, I was in Vietnam, and I got the text message from my son that you would never want to get. Dad, we just were in an accident. The car was T-boned in an intersection. Somebody went through a red light and T-boned the Tahoe, deployed all of the side airbags, and everyone was safe, including the dog who was seat-belted in the back middle seat. But the airbags went off, and actually, my daughter was holding a cup, Starbucks cold cup, and it sheared the straw right off the top of the cup. That's how strong and fast those airbags are. But it saved them. It was the fruition of a good decision, right? Because we ended up with a strong, confident salesperson who knew what they were talking about and were willing to work with us. And listen. Customer insight is key. Gartner reports that 83% of buyers say reps who understand their business have the biggest impact on purchase decisions. If product knowledge gives a salesperson confidence, then customer insight gives them influence. Confidence and influence, the partners in a great sales scenario. Understanding the customer's world, their challenges, goals, environment is what separates an average rep from a truly consultative professional. It's not enough to know what you're selling. You need to know who you're selling it to and why it matters to them right now. You know, our virtual memorial gatherings business disrupted the funeral industry. They weren't ready for this. They weren't ready for the pandemic. They didn't have the technology, or maybe were complacent about just how they did business for so many years, traditional. It's a very traditional business. But we disrupted it. So we were able to take the celebration of life or the memorial service out of the funeral home, out of the church, or maybe it wasn't going to be in a church to start with, and put it somewhere where it really meant something to people. So from the scattering of ashes and bobbing on a sailboat in the Pacific Ocean outside of Hawaii and beaming that live stream by satellite to friends and family, or taking care of the memories of an Italian grandmother and mother whose kitchen was the central theme of her life, and placing the family around that kitchen table in her home and having them talk about their mother and grandmother and beaming that out to family and friends. Do you think that was meaningful? Do you think that was solving a problem? It was. It was taking what they would not even have imagined was possible. The customer didn't know it was possible. But by listening, by asking questions and listening, what is important? What are some of the memories that you have that you'd like to share? Where are the people located that want to participate in this? And we were able to transform that business and disrupt it just by listening, just by taking heed what's important. Buyers are informed. We already heard about this. Buyers are 57%, right, Matt? They know already about your company. and your product before they even talk to you. That's kind of, yeah. Knowledge is a bridge to trust. So you've got confidence, you've got influence, and now you've got trust. One of the most powerful assets a salesperson can bring into a conversation is knowledge, not just about their product, but of the customer's world, and here's why that matters. That knowledge is trust. We want students to internalize this. Knowing your stuff isn't just about having answers, it's about earning the right to ask deeper questions. You earn that right. That's where sales conversations really begin. When I show empathy to a customer, I'm earning the right to ask deeper questions. I couldn't pierce that veil if I didn't have the empathy or the understanding of where they're at. We can see the difference between product pushing and solution selling. You know, when I talk about going back to the basics, sometimes we get caught up in the sales profession, we get caught up in word salad, acronyms and sales enablement, and all of these terms don't mean anything to the customer. We get caught up in those, and we forget about the basic fundamentals. We want to talk about solutions. You can connect this directly to what you're already teaching, whether it's marketing, positioning, business case writing, or even capstone projects. If students can clearly articulate the customer impact, they're not really selling, they're just describing. Here's a little exercise you could do in the class. Knowledge is power. Pitch your favorite item. Students explain why they love something and pitch it's using features and benefits and solving a need. Just a little idea there. Another one is a flash pitch challenge. Assign students random products and give them 10 minutes to create a 90-second pitch. Some basic principles: questioning and listening, value alignment and empathy, trust building and clarity, mutual benefit, not pressure. When you pressure someone, you lose trust. You lose influence. You lose all the power that you came with. And you will lose a customer. I'm not going to go into detail on building a selling plan. A lot of that content is, you're already teaching it. But it does need to cover the basics like discovery, presentation, objections, and closing. Those are skills. And adapting to situations, we've already talked about that. That's powerful, being able to be flexible and adapt. And sometimes when we're listening, we fill in the blanks ourselves rather than wait to get the information from the customer. You know, there's always a fear. We talk about AI hallucinating, right? People say, well, AI hallucinates, you got to be careful. Guess what? People hallucinate. We fill in things that we don't know. There's probably no profession that does this better than salespeople. If we don't know, we kind of fill things in. Based on our experience, our life experiences, we fill things in. We see things that we didn't see. How many times have you heard that when at the scene of an accident and the police are asking for a description of what happened, and 4 different people who saw it saw 4 different things happen? Because they didn't see it all. And so they fill in what they didn't see. Your mind does that. It tricks you, and it fills in the gaps because it can't connect things that aren't connected. AI does that. Guess why? Because humans taught it. Humans created AI. It's just another way of hallucinating. So we have to be careful. Whole system thinking, when we talk about building a sales plan, we're not talking about lining up steps on a checklist. We're talking about training students to think like systems designers, because great salespeople see the big picture. Being able to back up and see the big picture rather than just stepping in and thinking you know everything. So whole system thinking in sales means understanding how all the pieces fit together. Your product, the buying process, the decision makers, the customers' internal challenges, the competitive landscape, and even the timing of the deal. Every part affects the others. So let me give you an example. Software enterprise firm, one rep was stuck. She had a champion in the IT department, but the CFO was blocking the deal due to budget constraints, and instead of pushing harder, she zoomed out. She mapped the internal org chart, identified business goals for each stakeholder, and realized the HR team had the funds available under a whole different workforce optimization initiative. And so by repositioning the software as part of that initiative, she unlocked a new budget path and won the deal. That's whole system thinking in action, really going outside of what you think is going on. So here's a classroom exercise: build a selling plan, student competition idea, a sales pipeline idea. This will all be in the slides for you. So just in wrapping up, selling is serving, help, don't push, long-term thinking. And I'm just going to get right down here to the back end, because I want to just talk to you about, just 1 second, about SMAI accreditation. I'm going to invite you to come over to the Conestoga table at the coffee break. I'll be there and I'll answer your questions, and I've got some QR codes for you that you can get more information about accrediting your programs. Now, I'm just going to wrap up with something. And it's over there too on the table. There's a little QR code for this. This is kind of something that you could bring into the classroom if you want. It's YouTube Shorts, and it's sales advice. People writing into Dr. Close, and Dr. Close gives them advice with the side of sarcasm. And just little 1-minute shorts, and I'm going to play one for you. I think you'll resonate with this one. Hopefully. Oh, we don't have audio.
Dr. Close. Today's meltdown comes from a panicked student who writes, "Dear Dr. Close, my professor went to some conference and now wants us to do more role plays. Is this for real? Oh, sweetheart, it's very real. And honestly, about time. For years, sales classes were basically daycare for adults. Sit in your chair, nod your head, memorize some acronyms, and pretend you're learning. But out in the real world, your boss won't care how many sales models you can regurgitate. They care if you can handle pressure, think on your feet, and actually close. Role plays are where we separate the wannabes from the professionals. You're gonna sweat. You're gonna stumble. You're gonna say something so dumb you'll wake up at 3 a.m. replaying it. Congratulations, that's called growth. Your professor isn't torturing you. They're finally preparing you for the savage jungle called quota. So buckle up, champ. This is your shot to suck behind the scenes so you don't fail in public. Now shut up, embrace the cringe, and sell. And smash that subscribe button, because this pain is just getting started. Welcome to Shut Up and Sell. I'm your host, Dr. Close. Today's
So, whether you use it or not, it's there. It's a gift for you. There's a new one comes out every weekday, and hopefully inspire you and your students in a humorous way. Thank you very much for your time. I've appreciated it. I'll see you over at my table.
Thank you, Willis. Really appreciate it. You know, I'm struck by the fact that, as teachers, instructors, professors, we all have a philosophy that drives how we do what we do. We have our own personal brand, personal way of doing it. And the philosophy of a teacher that I really respect is that listening is the shortest distance between two people. And I see that coming out of this as well with sales. the importance of actively listening and closing that gap with someone in the process of sales. So thank you so much, Willis, for your insights and your stories, and some opportunities to do some things in class as well with some of your ideas here.